So welcome back everyone to our monthly meetup, the Financial Freedom Through Apartment Investing. We are an affiliate of the GOB Network of Apartment Investors. And on this platform, we educate, we empower, and we connect people to wealth. And today we have a very esteemed guest on the platform, Dr. Johannes Urpelainen, who is the Prince Sultan bin Abdulaziz Professor of Energy and Resources and Environment at Johns Hopkins University. He is also the Chief Investment Officer at CalRove CRE Partners. It is a California-based real estate investing company. He also advises Family Communities, Inc., a tech startup that uses 3D printing to address America's housing crisis and disrupt the real estate industry. Professor Johannes has founded and manages multiple research initiatives. He is a serial entrepreneur who has published 7 books and over 200 academic articles. He runs a 6-figure consulting practice and spends only 4 to 5 hours a week on it, thanks to a robust productivity system. Dr. Johannes, welcome to the platform, sir. Glad to have you on.
Thank you, Mark. It's wonderful to be here. I'm glad that we were able to make this work, and it's nice to see everyone.
Thank you. So I appreciate you when we connected. I was looking for someone to speak on productivity, and I know that is a big issue for me. I'm pretty sure a lot of people as well. We want to learn how to be productive, and I was one who read the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and your bio is very, very profound. And the 4 to 5 hour week that you work amidst your busy schedule, from what I've seen, I'm very interested in learning how you do it and, the system that you apply. So feel free to the floor is yours, sir. We're looking to hear.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. It's really nice to be here today. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to share what I guess you could call kind of like 7 rules of productivity. So just some things I've learned about how to be productive. And I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm not a kind of slides kind of guy, but I will write down those little rules in the chat in case they're useful. And of course, very interested in hearing what you all think. Do you see any value in this? What do you use yourself, and all that? Like Mark said, I unfortunately do need to leave pretty soon after the presentation. Good news, 2 buildings bought this weekend. So that means crazy amount of work this week, but as a syndicator, can't really complain, right? Awesome. That's a good weekend right there. So let's get started here. And so I'll just go through these one at a time. You already got from my sort of salesy bio that I do a number of different things. So these are not specifically for real estate, but I do think now that I work in syndications that many of these apply actually quite well in the real estate business. The real estate business. So the first rule that I want to just highlight, and I think this is kind of like the beginning of everything in productivity, is really be intentional. Okay, so I've seen a lot of people approach productivity as kind of like always doing something, or having a busy schedule, or having a lot of things going at any given time. So people brag like, I'm so busy and all that, kind of like what I just did today myself. But that's not really very helpful for productivity. I found over time that it's much more important to say no than to say yes. Okay, so really, and especially as your obligations accumulate, you might have family, you have a lot of things to do. If you are on a W-2 job, you have these syndications going. So the much more important thing is whenever there is an opportunity or something, to think, what does this really mean over time when it comes to things that I have to do? And some of the most sort of challenging things that I face right now are commitments that I made 3 or 4 years ago that are still coming to kind of haunt me. Projects that seem to be just going forever. So now I've become really kind of like hyper intentional. So right now, for example, I'm on sabbatical from my university job. So really, if it's not commercial real estate, I'm almost certain to say no. I might do a few favors here and there for friends, or if there's some very unique opportunity, but generally speaking, almost anything I just immediately flat out reject, even if there's quite a bit of money on the table. Because right now I want to get my real estate business going. That is the number one thing. And everything else is much less important right now. So just being very intentional on your time. It's like, why am I doing this? Is this helpful? Is this useful? is number one. It's really, that is, I think, the foundation of productivity. The second one is deal with unfinished business. So this is something that I learned from a business book called Traction. Some of you may have seen it. If you haven't, do read it. It's a kind of, it's not the most exciting book. Like, it's not like the 4-hour work week. You don't feel like, you've seen the light, but it has a lot of good, like very basic systems and processes. And one of my favorite lines in the book is really that it's not the amount of work that kind of burns you out, it's the amount of unfinished business. And this is something that I've seen so many times, is that people start these different projects or tasks or something, and they kind of leave them hanging. You have this little agreement that you were supposed to sign, and it's still there a month later. Or as a real estate syndicator, you were supposed to agree on how you were going to split the GP promote with your partners. The race is already ongoing, you still haven't done that. And every time this happens, you add a lot of stress and really just dealing with these kind of things. So what I always try to do is, if I have a list of things I need to do, I start with things that are close to being finished. Okay. So again, let's say you are doing a capital raise on a project and you only need 1 or 2 more investors. Focus on getting those investors locked in before you go and start raising the next $2 million thing, right? Because you get it out of the way, you release that mental space, and you can move on to the next task. And that's just something that when I read that book, just actually quite recently, it just kind of really clicked. I realized that that's what happens to me as well. When I have a lot of sort of like dead weight from previous projects that just never get finished, that is very stressful. But if I can just finish them, move on and focus on the next thing, that really helps a lot. So deal with unfinished business. Don't let it, be the kind of like a sort of stone around your neck forever. A third one that I think is very helpful is just have like systems and templates for everything. So basically, really, whenever you are doing something, unless it's a kind of a one-off task, it's really helpful to put together some kind of a system or template how you do it every time. So to give you an example, once I'm done with this presentation, I'm going to give you my contact information and everything, right? After all, I'm doing business here. Maybe some of you will want to invest in my deals or work on a JV or something, always open to those things. I'm going to put my information there. And instead of typing it up every time, I'm just going to go to my contact information template, dump it in the chat, and move on. Okay. So doesn't seem like a big saving, but I see many faces here that I know from meetups. You know how much time this stuff can take. So if you can do it just a little more efficiently, a little more standardized every week, it saves you in the end some trouble. Similarly, I have a YouTube channel, and in the past I used to kind of approach each video in a kind of an individual way. So I start and I do it, I upload. Now I have it down to a science. I can produce it very quickly, upload it quickly, put the end screens, put the description, everything is ready. So it all happens very efficiently. And that has the benefit that, first of all, I save time, but second of all, I'm also much more likely to produce the next YouTube video, because you don't start getting this sort of dreading sense that, do I really need to go through all those steps again, right? Instead, it's like, okay, that's easy. Let me talk about my favorite topics to my audience. Let me get it out there and move on to the next thing. So having these systems is the next important rule. The fourth one that I would next highlight here is just like always be learning. So I think it's always good to observe yourself, right? It's like, what am I doing that's working? What am I doing that is not working? Okay, that's very hard to do because it means you have to be honest with yourself. It's like, okay, now I'm again down that rabbit hole and this is really not helpful. If you have good partners or friends who are willing to call out your BS, that helps a lot, right? Because you have people who are saying like, hey, Johannes, now you gotta stop doing this. Every time we work together, you are doing this thing. And then it's up to you then to take that criticism well, instead of starting to be defensive or fight back, say like, okay, you know what, I get the point, like I do this too much. And for other people, if you know them well and you feel sort of comfortable enough, you should also confront them. If you have a partner who keeps repeating the same mistake, you should at some point just politely tell them that, hey, Sarah, every time we have a meeting, you never seem to write down what you were supposed to do. It's like you always forget what you were supposed to do. Can we just like do something about that? And if you are in a kind of if you have a good working relationship, it really helps. People take feedback well. You shouldn't obviously call people out randomly in like public events for being terrible, because that triggers a defensive response. It's embarrassing for everybody. But like private, the people you know, just give them the feedback and help everybody grow. I think that's another thing that's important in productivity. A fifth one that I really find is like power of partnerships. And this is something that I want to sort of highlight in two kind of like positive and negative way. One, of course, is that it's very important to work with people who bring something to the table that you don't have, right? So to give you an example from my own, I'm fairly new to real estate. I've been a passive investor for some time, but I've only fairly recently started doing my own syndications. So that means there's a ton of stuff I just don't know, right? And for example, one area where I have no idea, I'm really a complete newcomer, is asset management, right? So it's very important then to work with people, find people who know how to do asset management, team up with them, learn from them, and just identify like, what do I bring to the table? What do they bring to the table? So that's one side. That's sort of the positive side, like trying to find people with complementary skills. The negative side of this is also important to learn to realize when partnerships don't work, right? Because I'm sure everybody's had experiences working with other people where it just doesn't click, right? And somehow the working relationship isn't productive and everything. So how do you recognize that it's not working? And I think I found that there's like 2 or 3 things that you need to keep an eye on. One of them is really just that if you don't get anything done, that like even after, you know, like you meet every week and whatever, you're always texting and on Zoom and meeting and all that, and just nothing happens. Like you're not making any progress at all. At some point, you just have to recognize that either this partnership needs to change or you need to find a new partner for the work. So, because in the end, the goal is to get work done. The goal is not to like have fun. The goal, it's good to have fun, it's important, but that's not the end goal. The end goal is to get work done. So if you're having a lot of fun, but nothing happens, it's not a great partnership for productivity. Second thing is just like, how do you feel about it? Like, are you getting along? So again, that's not the main point. If you're looking for partners to be productive, you're not looking for people who are nice. That's not the goal here. Again, the goal is people who get things done. But if everything turns into a fight or argument and nothing ever gets settled, at some point you have to recognize that the chemistry just isn't there, right? So when I started working in real estate, I tried all kinds of partnerships. I teamed up with a lot of people with big plans to take down buildings, right? We were like, oh, let's go, let's do it. And then in the end, many of those didn't work. But at this point, after, you know, been doing things, not necessarily real estate, but other things for a long time, I had the wisdom to sort of realize that like, this is not going to work. And so I just told them politely then that, look, we've now tried to do this for a few months. We are not making any progress. Everybody's frustrated. Maybe we need to consider the fact that this is not the right partnership. Again, not because they are bad and I'm good, but just because it just somehow that particular connection didn't happen, right? So I think that's just something that you need to keep an eye on. You cannot obviously like just immediately, you don't want to be like impulsive, right? If you don't get everything you want in 2 weeks, it's probably because you just didn't give it enough time, right? It takes some time to kind of get into the space and into the zone and really get things going. But at some point you have to recognize if it's not working. So that's something I would say on the partnership side is important. The next one, I would just want to talk a little bit about this sort of idea of have fun. Now, again, not every task is fun. Like not every activity can be fun. So again, like, you know, we got these offers accepted this weekend. That's wonderful. Obviously, everybody's celebrating. I had some champagne last night myself and all that. So that's awesome. But now the brokers are asking, like, can you send us the operating agreement for the LLC? And the banks are asking, like, okay, what's your credit score and tell us about this and that. It's not fun, but it has to be done. But if you're not enjoying the process overall, then something is kind of wrong. Maybe you are not in the right line of business. Maybe you should make some changes because you will burn out pretty quickly if you don't enjoy it. If you're trying to force yourself to do something, you're not going to be great at it. And I don't think you're going to be very productive. So, and this is something like, I think the key thing here is you don't want to force yourself to have fun. The point is not to fake it, kind of say like, oh, I'm having so much fun when you're really not. It's to find things that you enjoy. Okay, I think that's critical. So again, if we take the example of real estate, which I think is why many of you are here, there's a different roles in real estate, right? So one of them is looking for deals, right? So if you are somebody who enjoys like hunting deals and touring assets and I don't know, like direct mail to sellers, I don't know if anybody enjoys that, but if you do, then, you know, go for it, give it a try, see if it works. Somebody else might enjoy more like capital raising, talking to investors, right? That's an enjoyable activity if you are somebody who kind of likes talking to people, likes talking about this stuff, and has a very thick skin and is willing to hear a lot like, no, thanks, I'm not interested. That's something I'm trying to raise capital now for one deal. And just the fact whenever you get like a no, which is mostly what you get, you know, it's like you really have to think like, is this something I'm okay with? And if you are, then that's wonderful. If not, then maybe again, something else. So just again, like knowing what are the things that you enjoy. The secret is being something that you enjoy and you're good at. When you put those two things together, then I think that's important. And finally, of course, when we talk about productivity, we want to talk about kind of like manage tasks and time. Now, this is an area with, I think there's a lot of sort of misconceptions. So in some sense, I think the way to think about time management and task management is to figure out what are the tasks that you need to get done now that are kind of like priorities. And for those, I would suggest you just block time for them. You put in your calendar 2 hours for like, okay, finish the offering memorandum for investors, because it has to be done this week. It cannot be next week. It cannot be next month. We need it this week so we can start raising money. So that would be the kind of task that you block. You just put like, okay, I'm going to work on that. And it's kind of amazing how much that helps. Like when I put on my calendar that I need to work on this, I'm much more likely to work on it because it's in the calendar, okay? And at the same time, there's some other tasks that are not so sort of urgent. So I list them. I put a list of things I need to do, like reach out to Mark and check if we can do a YouTube at some point, you know, or, you know, clean the room or something like that. Things that are not like immediately pressing or urgent, or necessarily even like, I guess important, but not like important in the sense of like everything falls apart if we don't do it right now. Make a list of those. And today, for example, this morning, I was invited to a virtual meeting, which I found in the end like quite boring. I didn't see a lot of value in the meeting. And so what I did, I just started knocking off those items on my like secondary list. I was there, I pretended to be paying attention, I wasn't, I was just knocking out stuff, okay? So that's something that you can do with tasks like that. But again, the ones that you need to get done, you block time, the others, you do them whenever you have a moment or all that, okay? So those are the 7 rules that I have right now. I have a bonus for you guys, which is the most powerful force in the universe is friction. So this is a kind of a general philosophy, which I think in the end is really important for productivity. And so what I mean by friction is that there's a lot of things in life that make just very hard for us to get things done, okay? So let me give you an example. I learned this from a famous YouTuber, Ali Abdaal, who has millions and millions of followers and who makes so much money a month that it's kind of embarrassing for people like me. But so what he had was this like really great example, which was when he started doing YouTube, before he had like 25 people doing work for him and everything, he had this sort of problem where it took him a long time to set up his like iPhone and the camera in a way that's kind of like good for the video, right? And as a result, he found himself not doing videos because he ended up like, okay, so it takes a lot of hassle, I'll do it tomorrow, right? And then he just did this one thing where he bought a tripod, put a camera on it, and just put it in a place where he puts it on, switch on the light, and he's ready to go. And after that, he had no difficulty recording videos like on a very consistent, rigorous basis because he made it easy for himself to do this. And I've tried to sort of really mimic this myself is that if I want to record a YouTube video, I need to have everything ready so I don't feel like, oh, what a hassle. Like, do I really need to do this today? I guess not. I can do it tomorrow. And you just keep kind of like postponing it, which in the end will kill my channel, because consistency is really important on social media, right? So just dealing with friction of trying to find ways to streamline things as much as you can. Whenever you see a process that's not streamlined, you think like, okay, what can I do to make this frictionless? What can I do to make it so that it's really like straightforward and easy to do? I'll give you another example of this. Suppose that I want to meet with somebody. They can do the right thing, which is what Mark did, which is send a calendar invite. It's on your calendar, you click, you join, you're in. Alternatively, they can send you an email, here's the information. What is the likelihood that I will be late, or I will decide like, you know what, I don't want to find this thing, I'll just do something else, I'll skip the meeting. It's so much lower if it's on your calendar, one click and go. Why do you think Amazon sells so much stuff? That one-click thing where you don't need to go through and fill a credit card information is probably make them like billions of dollars, you know? So those are the kind of things that they seem kind of trivial, but every day you need to deal with these issues. So just set them up in a way that's really conducive to doing things consistently and getting the results. So that's what I had to say today. Thank you very much for having me. It's been great fun.
I appreciate it. That was awesome, Doctor. So I will quickly open the floor for a few questions. If anyone has any questions for Dr. Johannes, feel free to ask them, as you know, he's pressed for time. So unmute yourself and just ask your questions.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. This is like a TED Talk, 18 minutes. I love it. Right? That friction part. So you're saying the friction is all the things that you shouldn't be doing. That's what you call friction?
Well, so in the sense of kind of like all the hassle around the tasks that you should do. So friction is not like, let's say somebody invites me to give some presentation to a local club, which does nothing to advance anything I believe in. That's not friction, that's a distraction. Friction is things like, okay, so Mark sets up his meetup, he did it the right way, I click, I get in. But suppose that he had instead something like, go here, do a registration, then send in a text message, and then you'll get an email, and then that's friction. And that makes it much more likely that I'm 10 minutes late or something like that.
Okay. So how does that transpire into the business world? Like you talk about rules productivity transfer into productivity.
Yeah, so I think one way to think of it is that if you think of any business, and let's take again real estate as an example, there's a lot of tasks that you kind of need to repeat. So let me give you one example of this. Suppose that you're working with your partner, you have a team, and okay, we're going to take down this building in Jacksonville, Florida. Okay, there's a few ways to negotiate this. My preference would be something fairly straightforward, where we get together and say like, okay, you're going to do asset management, you're going to do capital raise, you're going to do the due diligence, you're going to bring in at-risk capital. The standard split is 20% asset management, 25%. Let's write them down, let's stare at it, let's agree, and let's go. So that is how I would like to do it. I've recently, no names, I'm not going to mention which specific deal, but I've had an experience where it took us 6 weeks to figure out a very simple thing on which we were supposed to have an agreement on, like, what do you get for doing this certain task? 6 weeks, probably like 7 or 8 phone calls, completely inconsequential. That's friction. That's something that made me think like, I'm not sure if I want to work with the same team again, because if everything is so difficult, this is not the best use of my time.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or anything you want to add or inquire of? Feel free to ask now.
Okay. I got one more question. I'm looking at my notes, right?
Go right ahead.
And when you said deal with unfinished business, are you saying just stick with one thing at one time, or just finish the task at hand.
Yeah,
But
so
you can do three things, and we can do different things at a time, but just finish the task at hand and get done.
yeah, so I think exactly more the latter. Like, so for example, I do a lot of different things. In my case, I think I do too many things, and I need to at some point sort of get rid of some of them. But the point I was making with that was really exactly what you just said, is that if you have something that's close to being finished, try to get it done so that it's kind of like out of your mind and you can move on to the next thing. So again, you could think of in the case of real estate, let's say your bank wants some document. It's not a big deal. This is not gonna, kind of cause your deal to collapse or something. It's just a little bit tedious. You need to put together some numbers for like a personal financial statement or something. Okay, do that thing, send it to the bank, done, move on, and then go and do the fun and enjoyable sort of bigger things on the project, because you get it done. If you instead just keep postponing it, it's always going to be there, back of your head, kind of bothering you. It's like, I need to do the financial statement, and it really kind of like sucks energy out of you. Okay. So that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking is something it's like something that you can wrap up and get done. That's good. Now, of course, I know that I've seen some people try to kind of like cheat this like a little bit. They create like to-do items that don't make any sense just so that they can get them off their to-do list. Don't do that. Like, that gives you a false idea, because then you get used to this idea that the point is to get rid of items on your list rather than doing real work. Focus only on things that actually are useful.
One last question.
Sure.
But listen, anybody ask no questions, I'm gonna ask questions tonight. Because I'm like when Mark says about the time management part, I believe you gotta manage yourself, and I'm working on this year. I'm gonna work on this really hard. Are you using a planner? What do you use to manage yourself?
That's a great question. So in terms of practical things, I'm actually very old school. I just really write down the things I need to do. So I have kind of like a combined calendar plus notebook on my computer. So I put like, okay, here, let's say, the way it might look like, for example, is let's say 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. I have a meeting with the team. And then I have a next meeting is, let's say, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And in the middle, I have just like, during this time, try to get the following things done. So that would be so it's very simple. I don't use like very sophisticated tools. And I'm not saying that my system is necessarily the best, but the benefit that my system has is that you have the notes and the calendar in the same place. So that means that when you do have downtime, you can start going through those little things that you need to get done and just knock them off.
Thank you.
Now, how big is it to like pre-plan your days ahead of time in order to help save a certain amount of time throughout the week?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. The way I would think of it is that I do usually try to have a pretty good sense of like any commitments and everything I have on a day-to-day basis, just so that I know like what it's looking like and when can I do things, when I cannot do things, all that. But at the same time, I think it's also important to have some white space in the calendar. Like, you don't want to program yourself like 20 hours a day, because again, think of like, I'll take again just my example. Imagine if I had like jam-packed this week, like I had absolutely like scheduled like every meeting from 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. just like optimize everything, and then I get these 2 buildings accepted. Then I would have to spend a huge amount of time canceling my meetings, because now I have to fly to Florida on an extremely short notice to take a look at them, just make sure that everything is actually ready to pay somebody, millions and millions of dollars. At the same time, I also need to do a lot of paperwork. I need to set up new LLCs. If I hadn't set aside some time for these kind of things, that would be very bad. So I try to I try to pace myself that like, it's not like everything is on Monday and then everything else is empty, but I do try to leave white space, because there's always something happening that I don't anticipate. And I want to be kind of like resilient, that if something goes wrong, I'm still able to act.
Now, is there a defined time that you would say it would take someone, let's say myself, who's just starting in business, or, whatever the case may be, is there a timeline where you can say I can achieve getting to that 4 to 5 hour work week on a consistent basis, or is that something that's going to happen at your leisure?
That's a great question. So in my case, first of all, just to be clear, the 4 to 5 hours is the consulting business. I do like, it's not like I do everything. I'm a professor of like everything in 4 hours a week. That I think would be quite that. But I think that's actually, you bring a great point. Something I did not talk about a lot today is that one thing that I found is very helpful is thinking of things like, another favorite business book of mine is the E-Myth, which has had nothing to do with e-commerce. It has to do with small business. And the book can be summarized in like one sentence, which is, you should not work in your business, you should work on your business, okay? So you're basically building systems that become automatic. And that's exactly the point, is that you might first have to work for a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, however long it takes, a lot of work. But then if you do things right, at that point, things should be running on autopilot. And that's sort of like what I've tried to do with, for example, my teaching. I'm a professor, so I have to teach a lot. But I have found ways to set it up in a way that I can walk in the room and I can be a great teacher with like very limited prep. I still need to be there, but I don't need to spend like, I remember when I started, I spent like days preparing, right? Now I walk in, I get started, and it goes a lot better than it did 10 years ago. It's because I have the system. So let me give you 2 examples of this that I know. So one of them is I went to an investor conference last fall, where I met a very nice Taiwanese American gentleman who was maybe like 30 or 31 years old. And after visiting his home for dinner, I also realized he has a lot more money than I do. And I was wondering, like, how did he do it? And so I asked him, like, okay, so, clearly you have a lot of assets, but how did you do it? He came up with some kind of a software for managing kind of employee clocking in, clocking out for businesses when he was in college. He's still the CEO of the company, but everything is automatic. So it takes him like 30 minutes a week to run the business. Okay. So that's pretty impressive, right? Initially, he had to work very hard, but then he was able to set it up in a way that he still gets like all the benefits of being the active manager, but it doesn't take a lot of his time. That's one. Another one is I saw on YouTube a gentleman who runs Airbnb. He has 24 units and he makes $50,000 a month on those 24 units profit. And he spends 10 hours a week doing that. Again, how? He set up a system. It took him years, but now he has a system where almost everything is automatic. Unless there's some kind of a complete disaster, he doesn't really need to spend a lot of time on that. So he did the right thing. Instead of trying to manage it himself, he learned how to automatize. And that's how you get to that 4 to 5 work week, right? Is that you try to build systems and automatize things.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Doctor. We'll take a final question if anyone else have anything to ask, so we can let Dr. Johannes go deal with these 2 buildings that he just got under contract.
I'll comment. I feel like I'm always busy, but I'm not tackling the tasks like I need to. And that is the most frustrating thing for my own self. And any advice around that, I don't have accountability. That is true in my life. And I'm trying places to find it. And it's great showing up in rooms like this because you have other people there. But it's not enough. I am capable of so much more, and I'm just not producing it.
Yeah, so I think that's a problem for all of us. Today's world is very complicated, and we always bombarded with all kinds of things. I think the key thing there is to sort of learn how to say no to things. That's really just something that's important. And I tend to refer to books. I like reading books. There's a book, I haven't read this yet, but it has a great title. I think the title it's something like Hell Yeah or No is the title. And the point here is that when somebody asks you to do something, or you have an opportunity to do something, are you really genuinely enthusiastic that this is going to be a big step forward for me? Is this really going to change my life? Or is it something that it's not? And if you feel like it's not so great, then just don't do it. Just learn to say flat out no. Of course, there's some things where you cannot do it. Again, if If your child gets sick or, there's a water leak or something, you just have to deal with it, right? I mean, it is what it is. But if somebody comes to you again with a request like, hey, I would like to take an hour of your time because I want you to help my business for free, you should then think like, okay, maybe it's beneficial. Sometimes it is. Like, again, Mark isn't paying me anything, full disclosure. I'm here as a volunteer because I like this community. Maybe some of you guys want to invest with us. So there's a sort of like everybody's benefiting, right? But I get a lot of requests where some consulting company where people make $1,000 an hour come to me and say, hey, professor, we'd love to get your thoughts on Ukrainian energy security. Can you schedule an hour meeting for us? And then ask, how much do you pay? We have no budget for this. Then I just say, no, like it's really not worth my time to do this, right? So these kind of like just learning when to say no and when to take action, I think is helpful.
Thank you.
I will be the first to say, Professor, I appreciate you jumping on and sharing your expertise with me, because it was a shot in the dark, but I definitely learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the attendees has as well. And these are things I would definitely apply into my day-to-day routine on top of what I already do. So with that said, we won't hold you any longer, Professor. Thank you so much for your expertise and your time. It was truly appreciated, and we look forward to, if you guys haven't followed Dr. Johannes, I believe he dropped his information in the chat. Definitely connect with him and speak with him and find out about his deals. Hey, exactly. You never know what they're about.
Thank you, Mark. It's really great to be here. And I think what you're doing with these kind of meetups, I think it's just wonderful to bring people together, have some content, have some this. It really helps. For me also, I'm fairly new to real estate, so being able to just benefit from people like you and all the other wonderful folks on this, it's just great. Thank you very much.
Definitely. Thank you. So before you drop off, Doctor, let's if you guys can jump on camera real quick, if you're able to, let's take the snapshot and, fix your hair, do whatever you have to do. Angel, how are you?
Doing all right. I'm still trying to hack up all the nastiness that formed in the mountains. It's yummy.
All right.
Sorry, oversharing. It's okay. You don't have to know how to respond.
Gotcha. So big smiles, everyone. 1, 2, 3. Uh-oh, 1 second. Sorry. All right. 1, 2, 3. What's going on here? I got it, but Angel's head was turned to the side.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. I'll try to step one more real quick. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. All right. So with that said, everyone, this has been the Financial Freedom Through Apartment Investing. Dr. Johannes, again, thank you. We will drop off, and for those who are staying for a few networking sessions, we'll definitely do some breakout rooms and you guys can connect. Until next time.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye.